Today's book is State Profiles, Minnesota. We're going to learn all about the state of Minnesota today. The North Shore. Here's a picture of Gooseberry Falls State Park. A family is hiking on a sunny summer day in northern Minnesota. They begin at Gooseberry Falls State Park and trek to the waterfalls. Water spills over the upper, middle, and lower falls. The family wades into shallow pools of water. Soon, the hikers leave the falls behind to continue north along the shore of Lake Superior. Birds chirp in the forest as the family spots a deer. After several miles, they reach Split Rock Lighthouse State Park and follow the trail to the lake. Waves crash against the steep cliff where the old lighthouse stands. Welcome to Minnesota. Lighting the way. Here's a picture of Split Rock Lighthouse. Storms can make the North Shore a dangerous shipping route. One storm in 1905 wrecked 29 ships. This loss led to the building of Split Rock Lighthouse in 1910. Other top sites: Boundary Waters Canoe Area, Mall of America, Mississippi River Headwaters, and the Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox statue. Where is Minnesota? Here's Minnesota in yellow. Minnesota is part of the upper Midwest region of the United States. Here on this map, it shows the United States, and you can see the location of Minnesota in yellow there. It shares a northern border with Canada. Lake Superior and Wisconsin meet Minnesota's eastern border. Here's Lake Superior, and then the state of Wisconsin on the eastern side. Iowa lies to the south. Here's Iowa. South Dakota and North Dakota form the western border. Here's North Dakota, and here's South Dakota. Minnesota covers a total of 86,936 square miles, 225,163 square kilometers. Most Minnesotans live in and around the Twin Cities. In east central Minnesota, here's the location of Minneapolis-St. Paul on the map. These cities are the capital, St. Paul, and the largest city, Minneapolis. Rochester and Duluth are other large cities in Minnesota. Minnesota's beginnings. Here's a painting of the Ojibwe people. The first people arrived in Minnesota around 12,000 years ago. The area eventually became home to the Dakota tribe. The Ojibwe entered Minnesota from the east several hundred years ago. They fought the Dakota and pushed them south. French explorers came to Minnesota in the mid-1600s. Fur traders from other European countries soon followed. American settlers and immigrants arrived in the early 1800s after the Louisiana Purchase. Farmers and loggers cleared the land. This led to conflict with the Dakota and Ojibwe. The tribes were later forced off of their homelands. In 1858, Minnesota joined the United States as the 32nd state. Native peoples of Minnesota. The Ojibwe people. Original lands in northern Minnesota, mainly along Lake Superior. More than 37,000 in Minnesota today, also called Chippewa. The Dakota people. Original lands in central and southern Minnesota. About 4,000 in Minnesota today, also called Sioux and Lakota. Landscape and climate. Minnesota is known as the land of 10,000 lakes. The largest within the state are Red Lake and Mille Lacs Lake. On the northeastern border lie the lakes and streams of the Boundary Waters Wilderness area. Forests cover northern Minnesota and the mineral-rich Iron Range. Southeastern Minnesota features woodlands and bluffs. The prairies in the west and southwest are mostly farmlands. The Mississippi and Minnesota rivers are two of the state's many waterways. Here's a picture of the Mississippi River in Red Wing. Minnesota's future, climate change. Minnesota is becoming warmer and wetter because of climate change. Residents are also experiencing stronger storms. These changes have led to more flooding and challenges in growing crops. Here's a picture of Minnehaha Falls in Minneapolis. Minnesota has 4 seasons. Summers in Minnesota are hot and humid. Winters bring below zero temperatures and heavy snowfall. Minnesotans must be prepared for blizzards in winter, floods in spring, and tornadoes in the summer. Wildlife. Minnesota is home to many different kinds of animals. Owls, eagles, and other birds of prey patrol the skies looking for their next meal. Packs of wolves prowl through northern forests to hunt moose, deer, and smaller prey. They compete for food with black bears, lynx, and coyotes. Beavers, loons, and muskrats build homes in Minnesota's many lakes and rivers. Walleye, bass, northern pike, and other fish swim in these waters. On the prairies, moles and ground squirrels hide from rattlesnakes and foxes. Here's a picture of a Canada lynx. This is a common loon, the state bird of Minnesota. 13-line ground squirrel, red fox, muskrat. Here's a picture of a gray wolf. Quite the howl. Wolves howl to communicate with each other. A howl can be as loud as a running lawnmower. The lifespan of a gray wolf is up to 13 years long. Here's a picture of the United States, and it shows in yellow where gray wolves live. As you can see, it comes down into the northern Minnesota region. People and communities. Minnesotans come from many backgrounds. Dakota and Ojibwe in the state may live on reservations, though many Ojibwe live around the Twin Cities. Many Minnesotans are descendants of European immigrants from Germany, Norway, Sweden, and Ireland. More recently, immigrants have arrived from Laos, Somalia, India, and Mexico. Minnesota's future, an aging population. By 2035, more Minnesotans will be over age 65 than under 18. This means older people will need care and fewer younger people will be able to work. Famous Minnesotan, Charles M. Schulz. Here's a picture of him. He was born on November 26, 1922, and died in 2000. His hometown is Minneapolis, Minnesota. He's famous for creating the Peanuts comic strip. Almost 3 of every 4 Minnesotans live in and around cities. Most live in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the surrounding areas. Rural residents make their homes on farms and in small towns. They live mainly in western and northern Minnesota. The population of rural areas is shrinking as Minnesotans seek jobs in cities. Here's a picture of downtown Minneapolis. The Twin Cities. Here's a picture of downtown St. Paul and the Mississippi River. Minneapolis and St. Paul are known as the Twin Cities. The Mississippi River separates these two important cities. St. Paul is the state capital. It began as a small settlement in 1838. Minneapolis was first settled in 1849. It is Minnesota's largest city in both area and population. The Twin Cities are famous for their theaters, museums, and concert halls. St. Paul is known for its historic architecture. Downtown Minneapolis is more modern. Lakes dot the city, earning it the nickname City of Lakes. Both cities use skyways to link buildings, keeping the residents warm in the cold winters. Here's a picture of a skyway in Minneapolis crossing the street. People don't have to go outside in the winter. A stolen capital? Early Minnesota leaders voted to move the capital to St. Peter. This city lies southwest of St. Paul along the Minnesota River. But one of the leaders stole the bill, and the capital was never moved. Industry. Minnesota's many natural resources provided work for early immigrants. Miners dug up iron ore that cargo ships transported across the Great Lakes. Loggers floated timber from northern forests down the Mississippi River to lumber mills. Farmers brought wheat to grain mills in towns and cities. Cargo Central. The Port of Duluth Superior is the busiest port on the Great Lakes. It handles an average of 70 billion pounds, 32 billion kilograms of cargo every year. Today, most Minnesotans have service jobs in healthcare, retail, and finance. Farmers grow soybeans, corn, and wheat. They also raise livestock. Factory workers produce medical devices, chemicals, and processed foods. Target, Best Buy, and 3M are a few of the major companies in the state. The world-famous Mayo Clinic is also based in Minnesota. Invented in Minnesota: rollerblades, the Nerf ball, Scotch tape, the Honey Crisp apple. Food. Here's a picture of a tater tot hot dish. Classic Minnesota foods include wild rice, walleye, and hot dish. Wild rice grows in the state's lakes and rivers. Cooks often use it to make wild rice soup. Walleye caught in the state's many lakes is served baked, deep fried, or in sandwiches. A hot dish combines meat, potatoes, vegetables, and canned soup into one baked meal. Don't forget about it. Here's a picture of faux soup, a bowl of faux soup. Immigrants from Eastern Asia brought pho to Minnesota. This hearty soup features broth, rice noodles, meat, peppers, and bean sprouts. The state's early immigrants brought many of the traditional foods that Minnesotans enjoy. Scandinavians introduced pancake like lefse and Swedish meatballs. Germans brought sausages and thin battered schnitzels to Minnesota. Italian immigrants popularized porchetta on the Iron Range in northern Minnesota. Here's a picture of lefse and a picture of a plate of schnitzel. Here's a recipe for creamy wild rice soup. Sports and entertainment. Minnesotans enjoy the outdoors all year long. They bike, hike, and camp in the state's many parks. In warm weather, people head to lakes and rivers to fish, swim, and boat. In the winter, residents enjoy skiing, snowmobiling, hockey, and ice fishing. Minnesotans cheer for professional baseball, hockey, football, soccer, and basketball teams. Minnesota is a hotspot for the arts. Residents enjoy music, fine art, and theater year-round. Minneapolis has the Guthrie Theater, the Walker Arts Center, and First Avenue. St. Paul features the Fitzgerald Theater and the Ordway Center, home to the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. Here's a picture of the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. Notable sports team, the Minnesota Lynx. They're part of the Women's National Basketball Association. They were formed in 1999 and play at Target Center. Festivals and tradition. Here's a picture of a sled dog race in Duluth. Minnesotans celebrate events all year long. The annual St. Paul Winter Carnival features ice palaces, ice sculptures, and parades. Up north, the John Bear Grease Sled Dog Marathon challenges racers. This is that picture right here. They compete on a tough course that stretches for almost 300 miles, 483 kilometers. Tall Tales. Minnesotans remember their logging history through the folklore of Paul Bunyan and his blue ox Babe. The city of Akeley celebrates these legends every year. It holds fishing contests, a parade, and a Paul Bunyan look-alike contest. Here's a picture of the Minnesota State Fair. And here's a picture of some fried cheese curds. Millions of people head to the Minnesota State Fair in the summer. They eat sweet corn, fried cheese curds, and pronto pups. Exhibits feature farm animals, butter sculptures, and farm equipment. Businesses display new products, and local artists show off their artwork. The State Fair is a great way to celebrate all that Minnesota has to offer. Here's a picture of the Minnesota timeline. 1669, French fur traders enter Minnesota. 1745, the Ojibwe defeat the Dakota and claim northern and eastern Minnesota. 1803, the Louisiana Purchase makes some of Minnesota part of the United States. 1820, construction begins on Fort Snelling, where the Minnesota River and Mississippi River meet. 1858, Minnesota becomes the 32nd state. 1862, the Dakota War ends with the defeat of the Dakota by the United States. 1992, the Mall of America opens in Bloomington, Minnesota. 2007, the Interstate 35W bridge over the Mississippi River in Minneapolis collapses. 2020, the death of George Floyd sparks protests against police brutality and racism in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the cities across the country. Minnesota facts. The nickname is the North Star State. The motto is the Star of the North. It was the 32nd state, and statehood was on May 11th, 1858. The capital city is St. Paul. Here's a picture of the state flag, which has actually just been changed in the last year. And here's some different industries they talk about, the government and state symbols, like the state bird is the loon, the state fish is the walleye, the state flower is the pink and white lady's slipper, and the state tree is the red pine. And that's all about Minnesota. The end. We'll have a new topic every Wednesday. We discuss different topics, animals, places, people, parts of history, each Wednesday for Educational Storytime Voyages.